How's the classes feeling to you? What classes you think gonna be topping DPS? Let's actually look and see if there's enough logs. WoW logs. I mean, Mage looks damn good. I didn't get to raid with a Warlock DPS or see any Warlocks DPS. There's a lot of movement though. There's a lot of movement in this raid. So let's see who's doing the best in Gnomeregan. Guys, does this say Shadow Priest on top? What? Are we saying Shadow Priest on top? No, guys. Okay, no. Fire Mage is best at 95%, guys. Oh my god, 95% is Priest? What is happening to this game, dude? No, this is boss damage. What is going on? Huh? Okay, at 9 and then 99 percentile though, it's Rogue and Fire Mage and Hunter. But to be honest, I would just go off of this right now. It looks like Rogue right now is top DPS across most fights. I don't think that, guys, we need a lot more data. We need a lot more data, okay? The raid has been out for 2 days. We can't just go off of this. Ellie Shaman is creeping up. Melee hunters with the right weapons is crazy. There's no logs with melee hunters doing good, though. And then the max is saying Rogue is BIS right now. So far, I was not very impressed with the warrior damage. I think we need to wait until the end of next week to come up with any numbers, because I personally wasn't even using runes in this raid. Warriors were also terrible early in BFD. They need some time. I think so too. Mutilate is nasty. If you get the epic dagger in the raid, guys, I feel like Mutilate's where it's at. The top 10 overall parse is a melee hunter. Okay, let's actually look at those. The thing about this raid, guys, is it's not a good raid for parsing, especially on the last boss. Like, the only way you're going to parse on that boss is if you have somebody else doing all the mechanics for you. Because, like, if you're a ranged DPS on the last boss, you have to go and click the buttons. That takes away all your damage. Okay, let's pick a boss. What's the best parsing boss? Electrocutioner is not good for melee because melee has to run out. Crowd Pummeler is probably the best parsing boss, right? You don't have to do much movement. There's no extra ads. It's just pure single target. Sheesh, boys. Warlocks. Okay, this is the boss we should be going off of for best DPS. DPS Warlock is on top, guys. I think Crowd Pummeler is by far the best boss to judge for DPS. I think the majority of Shadow Priests are just doing really well because maybe their rotation is easier. But the top-end Warlocks that are really good are crushing the meters. And Fire Mage looks good. We're gonna look at Hunters here in a second. I don't know how to look at Hunters that are running the correct logs or running the correct weapons. We're going to specifically just look at Crowd Pummelers and maybe Vicious Fallout. Okay. Are these melee hunters? Damage to bosses? Okay. I don't see any ranged DP. Okay, I see one marksman hunter. 2. Right now, guys, I see mainly Feral Druid, Warlock, Destrolock, and Rogue, and melee hunter. I actually see more melee hunters than anything. And there's one Shadow Priest. And there's some Fire Mages. There's some Fire Mages in here. Holy crap, I love this meta. If this continues, look at Tactics is 14. So it's Fire Mage and Destrolock, Melee Hunter, and Feral Druids. And there are some Shadow Priests in here, which is really cool to see in the top 100 right now. Let's check out. So Vicious Fallout, guys, is not technically a single target fight. For pure single target, you have to look at Crowd Pummeler. And maybe Electrocutioner, but I don't think that one's fair for melee. Yeah, For a pure single target fight, guys, Crowd Pummeler is where it's at, and it's all Warlocks. Because you can straight up turret on this fight. You can just be a turret. This boss, maybe he has a bunch of armor or something, because I'm not seeing any melee on this guy. Okay, maybe this boss isn't fair for melee, because he must have a bunch of armor. I don't see any shadow locks. Let's see what these guys... These guys are all Destro, I'm sure. Classes, Warlock. Yeah, unfortunately, guys, you can't tell. You can't tell what the Warlock is running. Incinerate, Chaos Bolt. I don't think any of these Warlocks are going to be running Affliction, to be honest with you. Incinerate, Chaos Bolt, Immolate. Okay. So Crowd Pummeler is actually not a good... Let's try Electrocutioner. This one is probably better overall of a single target test, because it looks like Electrocutioner doesn't have some kind of boosted armor, and it's all melee hunter single target. It's looking like, guys, right now to me it's looking like melee hunter and Destro lock meta. I mean, I called melee hunter was going to be insane. Raptor Strike, Raptor Strike. They have one button. Guys, 50 Raptor Strikes and 12 Flanking Strikes. What is this class? It's actually 2 buttons. Everything is fine. These guys are cranking. What weapon does this guy have? He's got Vanquisher's Sword. He's running dual wield. And Protector Sword. Are these weapons even good? I guess 30 DPS on a one hand is pretty much top end. It's Prebis. Let's run RFD right now so I can become a true melee hunter. RFD? Oh yeah, there is RFD. I totally forgot about RFD. Is there anything good in there for mages? Vanquishers is from RFD, yeah. It looks like Fire Mage is the way to go, but also, how about healing? How about healing meters are actually important on this raid, guys. You actually need a lot of throughput on healing in this raid. Healing to tanks. There's one mage in here. One mage. Mostly priests, but I think most people are just taking priests. And then H-Pals. H-Pals and Resto Shams are kind of in here too. I like that melee is not very good in this raid. I'm so glad that I don't have to bring warriors. I'm so glad. I'll just bring all ranged DPS to my raid. But the thing is, you want one warrior to soak gear. So you want like one warrior, one rogue, or one feral to soak gear. But then the rest of the group, you want a raid. We can actually do a new tier list. Raid maker. Let's do a new tier list real quick. Okay. So after doing the raid and realizing that melee are not very good, I wanted to let's make an adjustment from the original tier comp that I built, which was a very balanced tier comp. And now we'll take a look at a new comp. So rogues are actually top damage in the raid, and melee hunters are doing some of the most damage. So I don't know if you actually take warrior DPS anymore, unless you're trying to juice up one of your melee hunters. I know in group 2 you definitely take a Destro Lock and a Fire Mage. Those are because Destro Lock is one of the best classes for DPS. Warriors might scale. I think you take a warrior tank. I think I'm looking for a prot warrior now, just for the battle shout. I'm thinking definitely a BM hunter for last boss. BM hunters are really good at clicking the debuffs. You'll need 1 disc priest minimum. You actually need 2 healers. You actually need 2 healers in this raid. Melee hunters or BM hunters? For the last boss specifically, I think the last boss is the toughest boss. And you primarily want range DPS. So you can take one I guess one rogue, one prop warrior, and maybe one feral. But then I'm probably taking like 2 BM hunters like this. And maybe one of them could be marksman for true shot aura. And the healing is just very intensive. You almost need 3 healers in this raid. Or an arcane mage who can kind of fill both. You need 1 druid in the raid, so I'm kind of torn between a balanced druid and another healer. You need a healer. I think Shadow Priest is okay, but you need a solid healer here. I'm actually maybe thinking of just maybe a resto or a balanced druid that has wild growth or something. Maybe a restokin. Would be okay. It will juice your Destro and Firelock's damage by a lot. But you need a 4 or 5 range DPS. And the last one has to just be a juiced up healer, guys. It has to be like a Resto Shaman or another Priest. A Resto Shaman could be okay because of Mana Tide. Like ideally, that's probably what I would take to the raid. And it doesn't have to be a warrior tank. I just think that warrior tank is good. Because you get the shout, the damage, and then the BM hunters can play melee on some fights, and then they can swap to range for the last boss. Yeah, if you're running Devastate, I think you're fine. What do you guys think about this raid? About this comp for now that we know what we're talking about? Do you not need an off tank? Your feral is the off tank. Your feral is definitely the off tank. That's what I'm thinking. Shaman tank is good, but I don't think you bring a warrior DPS right now. They're just not doing enough damage. Now keep in mind, we cleared this raid without an ideal comp. Melee not getting totems, Feral does give wild strikes. Feral tank does give wild strikes, right? They don't need the tank rune active. No, there's no fight where you need more than one. Where the Feral would need the tank rune active. He would still run wild strikes, but he could shift to bear form if he needs to like off tank. Like for instance, on the very first boss, we could have a Feral just off tank the Basilisk, but still provide the wild strikes. I'm thinking that this group right here would be really, really good. And the hunters could go melee if they wanted to do more damage. And they'd have wild strikes, and they'd have a warrior battle shout. If one of them is marksman, he could do true shot aura. And this group would be really good. The rogue does really good damage. So we have basically 2 melee DPS, kind of 4 melee DPS, because ideally the hunters are doing melee on fights where melee is good, and they're doing ranged on fights when you need ranged DPS. But hunters are the top simming. Hunters and rogues are top simming DPS right now. Let's check it out right here. Okay, this is all percentiles. I like to do 95th. As you can see, all the top damage right now is casters. The major issue with why the top DPS is all casters, I think, is because of this boss, Crowd Pummeler. I think he has, for some reason, he has bolstered armor. So the melee are not performing very well on this boss. Shadow Priests have shadow form. But if you go to the max, it's obviously DPS Warlocks on top if you're looking at the best locks. But this is over every boss. So in my opinion, the only boss that you can actually judge really is maybe like Electrocutioner. But even then, sometimes you have to run out. So this particular boss, I think, is the best one to go off of Sims. But if you look at the actual fight, so this is just the overall stats. I don't think the stats are that great either. Damage to bosses. You can see that a Shadow Priest and overall awesome is a Shadow Priest, and he's rank 1 in the world right now for damage to all bosses. He's averaging almost 200 DPS to all bosses. But if we just do the one boss that doesn't have a bunch of extra armor, you can see that melee start to take over, but it's only like melee hunters and rogues. There's occasionally, there's an enhancement shaman, but there's no, like one warrior here. Yeah, we're just not seeing a lot of warriors here in the top 100 on this boss, which is arguably one of the best bosses to parse on, because unless your raid was melee heavy, then you were just spending most of your time running in and out. Grubbus could be a decent one to look at. Okay, on Grubbus, warriors are going to start to be in this one because it's a 2-target fight, because you're tanking. I'm guaranteeing you these guys had a lot of cleave damage. Maybe he's not. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he didn't cleave. All right, well, maybe on this one, warriors are just a decent. Okay, he's not abusing cleave with the ad or anything. So on Grubbus, actually, melee looks like they're doing pretty good. You know what it is too, guys? I actually might have a theory here. The reason that we're not seeing a lot of warriors on the farther bosses in the raid is because comps that are warrior heavy are just not making it this far. Maybe that's what it is. But either way, I think that this comp right here is looking very, very good. Double Hunter, Rogue Feral, and with the Prot Tank. But you can get through the raid with pretty much any comp. As long as you're not too melee heavy, I feel like you have to have at least 4 ranged DPS, which only really leaves 2 melee spots, because you need 2 solid healers in this raid. We have 3 warriors, 1 rat, 1 feral. We can't kill the last boss. I don't think you'll be able to kill the last boss with that comp. You kind of need 6 ranged DPS for the last boss, or 4 ranged DPS and 2 healers to spread out your clicks without having too much downtime on the boss. If your melee have to run and go to click, it's very bad. This is why I think that you want you have 3 DPS with a hybrid boomkin that are you're gonna be, and then you have two more DPS that are ranged. To be honest, you don't even really need to take any melee DPS. I mean, you could take a rogue because they're pretty good damage. You kind of just want a few leather in the raid to get gear, right? So it's like, all right, 1 warrior for male, 2 leather wearers, and then a couple of male wearers to split up some of the loot, and then one leather DPS, 2 cloth DPS, and then a cloth healer. I feel like that's the best setup all around. In the end, warriors will prevail. Maybe they will. Maybe the warriors will prevail in the end. As of right now, it's looking tough for warriors, but there are some doing good damage. But the reason that warriors are parsing high on the last boss is because they're not doing mechanics. These warriors that are doing higher damage, they ain't doing mechanics, guys. They're just hitting the boss. But we'll have to see.